Yo, Sonic Battle is pretty cool. Probably the coolest thing about it is Emerl. He serves as this game's customizable character. The more fights we win, the more skills we unlock, the more diverse his moveset becomes. Each different player can personalize their own little fighting robot the way they want to, giving each of them their own unique flair. However, I'm sure you can assume that he isn't always like this. The main selling point of this dude is to individualize him with a bunch of cool moves, but just like everyone else, Emerl starts off as nothing, just a hunk of junk with his own garbage moveset. And honestly, I think he's perfect just the way he is. He shouldn't be copying others, he needs to learn to be himself. So, is it possible to beat Sonic Battle without upgrades? The goal of this challenge is to complete every chapter in the story mode without making any upgrades to our robot. If we can reach and beat the final boss like this, then we win! Alrighty, let's get into the good stuff and start off with Chapter 1, starring Sonic. We open up with the blue blur, finding a Gizoid washed up on the beach. Our first instinct was to take it to Tails' house to have him inspected, but on our way there, Shadow appears. He wants us to hand the robot over, which of course ain't happening, so we decide to settle it over a fight. Oh, yeah, that's right. Some of these conflicts will force us to play other characters. They, of course, can't learn anything new like Emerl, so I think it's only fair to also burden them with their own handicap. We don't want this to be too easy, that just wouldn't be fun. So, if we're not playing as Emerl, then we are not allowed to use any of our special moves. The only reason why Emerl gets the pass is because, well, let's face it, they're not very good. Let's add that to the rules real quick. There we go. For those who haven't played this game, we have the choice between 3 kinds of special moves: Shot, Pow, and Set. Before each match, and after getting knocked out, we get to select 1 grounded special attack and 1 aerial special attack out of these categories. Most of these, if not all of these, are ridiculously OP since the enemy's AI has no idea how to deal with these. They can be used to easily cheese our way to victory. Now that we've lost that privilege, we might actually have to use our brain and come up with a plan. In fact, let's go over our basic moveset and see what we could do with it. Mashing B has us perform the standard combo. The finishing hit will send our opponents flying. Pressing B and one of the directions on the D-pad simultaneously will have us skip the combo and immediately execute the launcher attack. Pressing the D-pad in the opposite direction our character is facing will launch them upwards. A is, of course, jump, and following that with B is an air attack. But if we press A second time, we'll do some kind of aerial maneuver. It could be an air dash or a glide, it all depends on the character. Double tapping the same direction on the D-pad is usually a short leap or some kind of dash. Again, this is character dependent. R is how we perform the special moves. And lastly, the L button. It serves 2 unique functions. Tapping it will bring up a shield for a split second. If our opponent attacks us while the shield is out, they will be stunned for a brief amount of time. That'll be our time to strike back. And holding the L button will heal a bit of our health back and charge up some kind of super meter. Once that is completely filled, we can use our next special attack as a one-time use, one-hit KO move. And I just realized that the only one who can take advantage of that in this challenge is the one who is the least athletically inclined. He's definitely gonna need it. Another way to fill this up is by successfully blocking an attack. The stronger the hit, the more juice we get. Of course, every character has their own strengths, attributes, and quirks. We just have to figure out what they are and how we can use them effectively. Not that it really mattered for this first fray, Shadow was a complete pushover. There's a handful of these melees in each chapter, so we can gloss over the ones that don't leave much of an impact. We drop off the robot at Tails' place and find Rouge on the beach, to which we promptly beat her up. During this encounter, I came up with a very efficient way to take out the other fighters while playing as the other fighters. First, try to position the opponent next to a wall. Next, hit them with the launcher attack. The force of our attack will be so powerful that their body will bounce off the wall. While they're suspended in the air, we can actually follow up with another attack. Tap the D-pad in the same direction to leap in the air. Then, time the B button for an earth-shattering spike. This is called a pursuit attack. It does a hefty chunk of damage, but there's even more to it. Notice how our opponent has bounced off the ground and put into a tumble. Right before they fall back to the ground, perform another launcher. I think you can see where I'm going with this. This process easily destroys our foes in a matter of seconds, although it's not completely foolproof. They do have a chance to tech on the wall and counter our spike with their own spike. We just have to be quick with the inputs so ours can come out first. With some good timing and muscle memory, this shouldn't be too much of an issue. Now for the next few minutes, we have to teach Emerl how to fight in Tails' lab. All of this stuff I already explained, so moving on. Look, I know I said no upgrades, but this is purely a cosmetic change. If we're gonna do this, we better look our best. Ooh, Shadow's fighting pose. I feel like I'm legally obligated to have this equipped. After beating up Tails and our newly yassified son, a robot appears in front of Tails' house. Sonic suggests that Emerl should take it out by himself. So, it's finally time to play as the Gizoid. Alright, just how badly do you play? Oh, you're moving really slowly. And you can't jump very high. Oh, these attacks look super weak. And the launchers don't even launch. Oh no, I'm really putting myself through this, aren't I? Luckily, the opponent's moveset was just as terrible as ours, so we traded blows and steadily whittled it down. I do not expect every scuffle to be as simple as this one, so we need to find some winning strategies, and fast. Knuckles is our next major encounter. Let's see if we can figure something out. Oh yeah, Emerl can still use his special moves. They may just look like the dollar store versions of Sonic's, but we can actually use some of them effectively if we play our cards right. After some experimenting, I found setting the aerial special to POW was going to be one of our keys to victory. This would normally be the bounce bracelet, but our cheap knockoff works as a surprisingly decent juggling tool. Jump up, then press R while over the opponent. This will pop them up into the air. So, right before they touch the ground, we can again hit them with the same attack until they get knocked out. Just be aware that this move has deceptively few active frames, so timing is key. We give Knuckles his 2 comeuppance, then we obtain our first Chaos Emerald, finishing up Sonic's chapter. Up next is Tails' chapter. Now, unlike Sonic, Tails actually has a unique way to efficiently take out enemies. It's nothing too convoluted, it's all about this little move right here. Despite how simple it looks, it is unbelievably lethal. The damage is, well, it's kinda mediocre at best, but it can hit multiple times. It has an unusually active hitbox. It hits behind Tails, and, most importantly, it pops the opponent and Tails up in the air. I'm sure you can tell just by looking at the screen that the combination of all of these factors practically guarantees we take a stock once we're airborne. Once we get the hang of it, we can breeze through, well, every battle where we can play as Tails. This move is absolutely carrying us. Now, even though all of the fights were in Tails' favor, it wasn't necessarily pathetic. Tails' story slightly ramps up the difficulty in 2 ways. The first being it introduces 2v2s. Having more than one opponent on screen can, at times, be a bit overwhelming, so to keep us from being totally swamped, it would be better to handle them one at a time rather than as a group. Wait for one of them to approach, then wail away at them. If they both get caught in the mix, hey, that's good for consistent damage, but still try to mainly focus on getting one of them. Most of the time, our partner will be Emerl, who is trying his best, but can't really nab any kills. Hey, that's completely okay, buddy. While you can't do any meaningful damage, you can still do something very important for us. I want you to stun the enemies with your attacks so we can come in and shank them. You got it, pal? Nice! Awesome work. You're doing great, buddy. The second being enemies block more frequently. For most fighters, this isn't a huge issue. Emerl is as fast as a snail, is as durable as a wet tissue paper, and can only have 2 remotely viable moves at a time. We have to figure out which of our special moves they're going to block, and pray that they don't serve us a knuckle sandwich while retaliating. Now's a good time to mention another one of Emerl's special moves. His grounded shot, again, is a shoddy recreation of Sonic's, namely it doesn't have the big shockwave. While this is no longer a projectile, it can be used as a half-decent melee option. Emerl will charge up for a spin dash, then bounce backwards. It doesn't look like much, but it's surprisingly strong, and it stays active forever. This is also our most reliable way to land on elevated surfaces, and we kinda need to use it on elevated surfaces if we're attacking with it. Because we'll most likely hit the enemy at the start of the attack, they will have enough time to react and punish us before we can do anything. Performing this next to some kind of podium is much safer, since now the opponent has to take the time to jump to our level as we recharge. If we're not on the same ground when the grounded shot is complete, Emerl should be in the clear. After finding out the true secret of Emerl, the government starts tracking us down and bombards us with an onslaught of robots. We meet up with Sonic and try to tell him what we discovered, but Rouge swoops in and spoils the surprise. Sonic decides to give up Emerl's custody to her, which means, for this next chapter, we get to follow Rouge. On to Knuckles' chapter. I'm kidding, there is one interesting thing to talk about. After finding Rouge's secret nightclub, she starts training us to become the ultimate robot thief. Our first warm-up was to KO one guard robot 5 times. That goes as easy as you'd expect. Our second objective is a lot more tedious though. We need to avoid taking damage from Rouge for 2 whole minutes. At first I thought about fighting back. After all, the best defense is a good offense. The grounded set attack looked promising enough to do just that. It's like jazz hands with a quick flick of the wrist. While its damage output is laughably pitiful, it makes up for being fast and spammable. We could mash the R button to prevent her from laying a finger on us and stall out the time. However, if our mashing is even the slightest bit off, she could sneak in a quick jab, causing us to fail. Okay, what about our other specials? While they can KO her, they're a little unreliable because of how stubby they are. Even if we trade attacks, the challenge restarts. We need to try and keep our distance. As a joke, I wanted to see if we could outrun her with our grandma fitness strut. It actually seemed to be working until she managed to land a hit on us. What if we hid on one of the elevated surfaces? While she is completely capable of jumping up here, she takes a considerable amount of time landing. This sparked the idea of playing a game of cat and mouse with her. We jump onto this bumper, and just as she jumps, we walk off the other side. This works especially well with Rouge because her AI does not think to stop flying once she passes us up. In fact, you can watch her float off screen before she descends. Because of this, we can easily take our time and cheat her like this until the timer reaches 0, giving us an easy victory. And third, Emerl needs 5 KOs without getting KO'd once. We didn't break a sweat, mainly because Rouge doesn't fall like a rock, giving us plenty of time to react. In fact, she plummets so slowly that both of our special moves can juggle her. That doesn't feel right. After completing this one, our training is complete, we pick a lock, and Emerl absorbs another Chaos Emerald. That's pretty much it for Rouge. Even the 1v3 at the end was nothing short of a cakewalk. Seriously, who thought this was okay? Moving on to Knuckles' chapter. Aside from yet another rematch with him, the next handful of battles has us controlling the Echidna, and as much as I hate to say it, he doesn't have any specific jank to him. For this run, he is a slower and slightly stronger Sonic. When returning to the nightclub, Knuckles decides to gamble a few rounds and, in doing so, loses track of our son. While searching for him, we enter the theater and fight 2 gray Gamma units. Now, Gamma is basically the Ganondorf of this game. Rather slow, but absurdly powerful. By himself, he isn't much of a threat, but the moment they come in groups, it becomes a whole different story, especially if you're the only one on your team. A normal Gamma combo deals a hefty chunk of our health. With 2 of them here, there's more opportunities for us to get hit, and essentially unalive from a single interaction. Slamming them into a wall and spiking them can definitely deal loads of damage, but with more than one target, we can slam one but get denied by the other, plus sometimes when we attack them both, one of them might block. I tried to see if we could win by gliding into a wall, and yes, that does have a hitbox, but it's super weak and it has so much end lag that even Gamma can punish us. With enough experimenting, I did find another exploit, and it has to do with these bumpers again. Or really just any elevated surface. So sometimes the enemies might be overly defensive. I don't know why, but up here, they just don't guard when jumping to the higher ground. They can somehow block our special attacks in the air, but not basic combos and launchers. So when we successfully lure them up here and they're still airborne, we can fight them without any fear of a counter. Luckily, every fighter has a way to juggle the opponents. Remember how we can input a smash attack in the opposite direction? Well, once they get knocked into the air like this, they will be stuck in an endless loop if we perform the same move again, and again, and again. They literally can't do anything about this. The computers have another interesting quirk about platforms. If we're on top standing close to a ledge, with the opponent below us, they won't try to jump to our level. Instead, they will immediately use their air attack. Most of the cast can still hit us right here. However, a few of them, namely Amy and Gamma, cannot. Here we see a flock of Gammas helplessly fluttering beneath us because their initial jump doesn't propel them high enough for their attack to reach us, so they'll be stuck in an endless loop until we move farther away. This trick can actually be used to our advantage in scenarios like this. If one of them is goofing off while the other one is getting their lunch money stolen, we won't get overwhelmed or interrupted, and we can slowly but surely deal with them. Anywho, when following this tactic, the security robots turn into scrap. Just be prepared to block because they tend to explode once they faint.
What the fuck?
After that drawn-out quarrel, we now do the same exact thing, but with 3 robots. If we follow the same strategy as before, we can eventually do it. Just try to be as patient as possible, this one was a bit time-consuming. After that, we have about 7 more brawls, but we breeze through them quite effortlessly, so there's really nothing to note about them. The only thing we need to know is that we made a Chaos Emerald from the shards we collected from those battles. This concludes chapter number 4, so begins number 5, Amy. It starts off with us battling 2 Gizoids, followed by 2 1v1s in Amy's room. After this is a free-for-all with Cream and Amy. The first to 10 points wins. I believe this is the first time we've done this with Emerl, and boy howdy, it goes terribly. We could be schmixing one of them and the other could come in and disrupt us, potentially stealing our kill and or defeating us in the process. Also, at this point in the game, the enemies are a bit more ruthless. They can kill us more easily than before. We need to think outside the box for this. With enough experimenting, I came up with a rather shocking solution. Remember that grounded set move? The one with the jazz hands? Yeah, we were using it all wrong. See, it's pretty unreliable hitting someone on the ground with it. Hitting someone in the air is a different story. For whatever reason, it pops the opponent upwards if they're airborne. This allows us to juggle them in place until they lose all of their health. Now, thing is, they're not gonna wanna jump if we're all on the same level, so the best way to perform this is by being on an elevated surface and standing right next to the ledge. Remember, placing ourselves like this will always have the enemies jump and use their air attacks. Cream can actually hit us up here, so anticipate the jump and scoop them up with that ridiculous hitbox. Wow, she was practically underneath us and we snagged her. Oh wow, it hits really high too. Hang on, I'm very curious now. I want to see how far it reaches in front of us. Now that's quite long! Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the enemies ever block this move like our other specials, which makes it even more reliable. Again, the damage is pitiful, but you know what they say, slow and steady wins the race. Keep in mind, this takes up our grounded special move slot, so we can't launch ourselves with the grounded shot anymore. Luckily, our aerial shot works just as well. We just have to press R right after jumping, which basically means we can viably exploit our grounded set special to its fullest potential. We had to do this specific match twice, and they both took multiple attempts, because, again, they're pretty bloodthirsty. This next confrontation in Night Babylon was also pretty troublesome. Despite being a 2v2, we can't really find a way to get in safely. There is one semi-easy way to finagle our way through. This map is surrounded by 4 thin bumpers. Our job is to jump over the bumpers and lure them over to our side by jumping over after us. Again, the enemies don't block normal attacks when airborne or when they're just landing, so when they take the bait, we can punish them with our juggle. If one enemy is getting schmixed while the other one is out for revenge, simply run over to the other side and redo the process. Repeat this sleazy strategy for 2 battles to receive 2 Emerl shards. Emerl senses another shard over at Club Rouge. Rouge doesn't give in, so we immediately mop the floor with her. Then after some negotiations, we decided to make a deal. Rouge will give us her shard if Emerl can beat her one-on-one without special moves. You know, when I first read that, I was absolutely mortified. Our special moves are the only reason why we made it this far, and she is temporarily taking away the one decent thing in this robot's arsenal. At least, that is what's implied, but just for funsies, I wanted to see if anything bad would happen if we ignored that message and played just as we have been. You'd be very surprised to hear that when we won, everything continued as normal. She straight up lied to us! Thanks for giving me a heart attack for no reason! The final thing we do for Amy's chapter is take our last piece of the shard and fix it together into another Chaos Emerald. Moving on to Cream's chapter. Starting right off the bat, Cream and Emerl get kidnapped by Eggman. Our means to escape is by battling these 2 gray gamma units, without Cream because she doesn't like fighting, even though she tried kicking our butts last chapter. Now, I'm sure you can tell from what you've seen that these chromatic doppelgangers function the exact same as a normal gamma unit. The catch is that they don't have any voice clips, which, believe it or not, plays a factor in fighting them. After losing all of his health, Gamma lets out a line, letting the player know he is about to self-destruct.
Initiating recovery mode.
Because these units are mute, we don't have that indication, so we need to be incredibly attentive to when they limply fall to the floor. Emerl, being as frail as he is, should not be taking serious damage. After a few unit fights, we finally get to play as Cream. Sadly, she doesn't have any tricks up her sleeve either, but there were so many battles with her that I found yet another way to perform an infinite. It's basically that one strategy from earlier in the video, but without doing the pursuit attack, and man, this works disgustingly well in 1v1s. Also, here's a little silly thing I found from this. Because of Emerald's terrible stats, he can't wall jump vertically for his pursuit attack. Instead, the boy only goes horizontally, staying very close to the ground. That was pointless to mention, but it was an interesting kind of pointless, so I thought it was worth mentioning. I mean, look, after learning about that safer infinite, there's really nothing else worth mentioning about Cream's story. It was just that easy. Alright, now we can obtain our last Chaos Emerald in Shadow's story. Holy shit, Shadow is absolutely busted in this game. Even without special moves, there's just so much going for him. He has both powerful attacks to close out stocks, and ridiculous movement options to make him slippery and hard to hit. Top that off with the fastest run in the game, and possibly the best air attack in the game. It's quick, it's shockingly strong, it hits multiple times. I think it's active on like frame 1, it covers a lot of space, and most broken of all, it has noticeably low landing lag, which allows us to overwhelm the opponent by spamming the move, escape before we can get punished, or even reliably connect into our normals to set up a combo. All of Shadow's feuds are cheeks mainly because of this one move. Once we switch back to Emerl, Shadow bestows the task of beating up all of our friends before coming back to assert our dominance. All of this was very easy with the tools we had, albeit a bit tedious, but nothing we couldn't handle. Even Shadow's skirmish at the end, despite being a constant threat with his speed and power, was completed within 2 or 3 tries. I can't really say the same about the fight that follows. Here, Emerl must 1v2 Shadow and Sonic. Shadow on his own is already a menace, but now with a partner that has speed and power on par with him, well, it becomes overwhelming very quickly, especially since we're going solo. Trying to occupy them both with the strategies we already have is entirely possible, but very unreliable. We need to think of something. With a lot of trial and error, I did indeed come up with a plan that sometimes works. It involves our grounded shot and our aerial POW specials. First, equip them, then, when the match starts, find a way to juggle them both in the aerial POW. Once they're both in the mix, it's safe to say we can defeat them, giving us 2 points and putting us in a slight advantage. If we end up dying first, trust me, just restart the battle and try again. During our next stock, they will always block the aerial POW, so now we will switch to only using the grounded shot. While they're both respawning, mosey on over to this thin rectangle. Turn around, and when one of the hedgehogs is near us, press R to attack them while we launch ourselves on top of it. Walk off the opposite end, wait for them to jump over, then bounce back when they get close. Rinse and repeat until they both faint. Then try to restart all of that with the aerial POW. Also, if our special meter is completely filled, walk around to try and get them both close together. Then when the time is right, unleash your grounded shot for 2 easy KOs. In theory, all of this should work. The thing is, we are dealing with 2 absolute speed demons that can kill us in a single interaction. One single mistake will most likely be the cause of our death. We could juggle one of them, but the other will be free to act. We might accidentally waste our supercharged special. Even when we bounce ourselves out of harm's way, it still doesn't mean we're safe because of their quick movements. This plan is a bit shoddy, but sometimes everything goes exactly according to plan. Like, take a look at the screen. We're doing the second phase right now. They're getting hit, we're not getting touched. This is mainly because we are far enough away from the wall so that when the enemies come near us, they are not close enough to the wall where they immediately use their air attacks on us while we're landing. They will instead run up towards the wall and jump over it, which should allow us to safely hit them. Similar things can be said about the other 2 phases. Everyone needs to be placed in the correct position so we can tinker with how the enemies behave. The problem is getting into those positions and maintaining those positions, because that is not completely in our control. We can kinda make it happen, but there are 2 targets that, while they think very similarly, they don't move in unison because of their different stats. And when we kill one of them, they get to respawn wherever they want, putting them in a position to retaliate while we're finishing off the other one. As much as I hate to say it, Lady Luck plays a huge factor in this one. And unluckily for us, she is our best shot of succeeding. She watched us for an hour and a half, laughing at our failures. But eventually, she decided she had enough fun and finally gave us the W, ending Shadow's chapter and granting us the final part of the story mode, Emerl's chapter. This last stretch only has 3 mandatory fights, all of which are on the Death Egg. However, we are given the choice to fight everyone again before heading over there. There is absolutely nothing to gain from this. so why am I even bothering mentioning it? Well, this is the moment where Chaos appears for the very first time. Even though it is completely optional, I would like to win one match against him since this is the only time he shows up. Ah, look at this little dude. I could just pick him up and dip him in my coffee. Remember when I said Gamma was the Ganondorf of this game? I take that back. Chaos is the true Ganon. His mobility is somehow even worse, but a single B-button combo is enough to take us out. Also, he falls considerably faster than the rest of the cast, which allows him to more easily escape our jazz hands, and making the timing to juggle him even tighter. Yeah, we kinda need to be careful around him. The incredibly lame and boring way to deal with him is by standing next to the wall inside of this crater, wait for him to approach, then use our grounded shot to hit and run. Then we make our way over to the other side and repeat. The cooler way is finding out when the new timing is to juggle him so we can take his stock in a matter of seconds. While we did have to be extra careful with him, he wasn't too bad, all things considered. Alright, getting back on track with the story, Emerl gets transported to the Death Egg, which is then followed by the only time where we scrap with Eggman. It consists of 2 rounds, one where we have 5 stocks and another with 10. I remembered this being an incredibly unfair boss back in the day, so you would not believe how gooped and gagged I was when I beat both of the rounds on my second try. There was one huge thing that I noticed almost immediately when I started the battle, and no, I'm not talking about the Doctor. Eggman behaves like Rouge once he is airborne. When he gets knocked up, he will suspend himself for a bit, and then slowly descends back to the ground, giving us many opportunities to damage him. Sure, Ivo does drop a bomb every time he gets launched into the air when on the ground, and he has an endless onslaught of missiles that he doesn't stop firing until we get close to him, and like Gamma, explodes when he faints, which is nearly impossible to avoid with the moves we have. But if we can find a way to get in and keep him from landing, it is GG's. I mean, heck, really, only the first stock gives us any trouble because it's the only stock where Eggman can reliably use his attacks before we can catch him. We almost always survive a self-destruct, so as he's respawning, we can move around, find where he's dropping, then mug him before he can even land. Dying in this process is actually advantageous since we have better movement searching for him before plopping back into the game. This should be difficult. Why was it a walk in the park? And to end everything off, there's just one more fist fight with the final boss.
Our dear, sweet child.
Every other time we fought the Gizoid, it ends with us absolutely dominating him, purely because we've never buffed his moveset. However, at this point of the story, Eggman has successfully corrupted Emerl, which improved his fighting prowess so much that it looks like he's playing with cheat codes on. Him simply touching us could be enough to end us. So, what could we do? We could continuously smash attack him into the wall, but he will most likely counter us with an assault of pursuit attacks. That means our only safe way to take him out is by juggling him. The problem is that most of the time he will block our attacks when he's on the ground. Since this specific stage is a big flat surface with no platforms on it, the only way we can manipulate him into jumping is by jumping ourselves. Wait for Emerl to approach us, then when he's about to break, press A. If we timed it correctly, Sonic should be falling down just as Emerl is jumping up for an air attack. Now that he's in a vulnerable position, we should be able to safely launch him upwards. From there, we can slowly whittle his health down, then once he faints, create another opportunity to redo this for the next stock. While a very straightforward strategy, it's still very easy to mess up. Emerald's new speed is just as cracked as his moveset, so it'll be a bit awkward to find the right timing to jump and also position Sonic correctly to catch him. If we goof this part up even slightly, we'll be taking a massive beating. It'll take some time to get used to, but once we firmly grasp it, we'll be able to slowly chip away at his health and take away all 10 of his stocks. We have woefully destroyed our child to save the world. earning us a bittersweet victory. So, to answer the question at the beginning, yes, it is possible to beat Sonic Battle without upgrades. Well, that was a unique experience. I could have sworn all the nerfs I gave us would have made this a little bit tougher. Yeah, there were a few roadblocks here and there, but overall, this was still a rather harmless challenge. I don't think I got angry until, like, the last fight of Shadow's chapter, and the Eggman and Corrupted Emerl final battles were much less brutal than what I expected. Thank you all for watching and staying for this long. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and also I hope you're enjoying the new year thus far. And now, the Patreon supporters, brought to you by Mod! Oh, wait, I forgot to make the announcement. Oh, jeez, Yep, believe it or not, Mod has a Patreon now. And if it wasn't obvious enough, I am planning on singing all the names of the people who support me on there to nations of the world. I thought that would be a fun way to do it, instead of just saying the names out loud or showing them on screen. Donating $2 measly is enough to hear your name at the end and support the channel. I'm hoping we can eventually get to a point where the outro is just ridiculous and chaotic. That would just be so incredible to record. Right now, there's only one tier, but given time, there will be more. Hopefully, I can think of some worthwhile benefits for them. I'll make an update on that later down the line. I'm sorry, what did I put for that tier name? Mod's Mob. It's a friendly group of people aggressively showing everyone neat things. Any tier suggestions in the comments would be incredibly appreciated. Also, any support is always appreciated. So, just putting the word out there, don't feel pressured into joining. The choice is yours. I'll be here all day. Again, hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao? Like Sonic Chow. Oh, that actually works. Ooh, hopefully I can remember that.